Hi everyone, and welcome to Exploring the Build. If you've just found this place, then welcome. And if you're returning, I'm glad to have you back. I'm Alex, and this is my channel where we explore and theorycraft different character builds for Dungeons & Dragons. Today we have a requested build from Open World Addict. Open World had a bit of a challenge build for us. They wanted to see what a build would look like revolving around the Great Old One Warlock 10th level feature, Eldritch Hex. See, what Eldritch Hex does is that it buffs the Hex spell so that not only do you apply disadvantage to ability checks of a selected ability when you cast it on an enemy, you also apply disadvantage on saving throws of the chosen ability. Open World wanted to see how we could build both a Pact of the Blade Warlock and a Blaster Warlock while building around this feature specifically. Now, it is a really interesting feature and definitely going to be the core concept for our Wonky character build today, but I do want to kind of just get the blaster side of things out of the way as quick as possible. If we're building a blaster who's using this feature, we're probably taking Eldritch Blast plus Agonizing Blast as our main damage feature in order to benefit from Hex's bonus damage, and then using our actual spell slots and Mystic Arcanum for big debuff spells that have saving throws in order to benefit from the Eldritch Hex side of the feature. If you didn't want to do this and were okay foregoing the bonus damage from the Hex spell itself, you could also have some fun with Mind Sliver. You could cast Hex on an enemy, give them disadvantage on intelligence saving throws, cast Mind Sliver so that the enemy has disadvantage on their save, they'll hopefully fail, take some damage, and then Mind Sliver has its own built-in debuff, meaning next turn they'll suffer the same disadvantage on their Mind Sliver intelligence save, but they'll also suffer a D4 penalty from Mind Sliver itself, just creating this really nice snowball effect. The reason I'm getting those out of the way early in our concept though, is because we aren't specifically looking at those, we are instead going to look at a Pact of the Blade Warlock. See, there aren't many features that let you benefit from both the bonus damage on an attack and the debuff to an enemy's saving throw at the same time. Except for something like the Topple Weapon Mastery. We're able to hit an enemy with an attack, deal extra damage from Hex, and force them to make a saving throw that they could then have disadvantage on. And one of the weapons that has the Topple Weapon Mastery is the Quarterstaff. So, today for our Wonk character build, we are making a pure Warlock that is going to act and function in practice, or at least flavor, like a monk, all designed to work specifically around the Eldritch Hex feature. So, now that we know what we're doing, let's jump into this Wonky character build. Starting off in character creation with our origin, for our species, I'm going to go with human for this one, just because I like the extra origin feat that human gets, but any species could work. In fact, elf could be pretty reliable if you know you're going to be able to knock your enemies prone and gain advantage on attacks. The feat Elven Accuracy would be extremely handy on this build. But we're not doing that. We're going human, and as a human we're going to gain an extra origin feat. That origin feat is going to be dedicated to Magic Initiate Druid. Magic Initiate Druid allows us to pick up 2 Druid cantrips as well as 1 Druid spell that we can cast once per day for free. The spell and one of the cantrips aren't too important. You can have fun picking whatever you would like there, but we definitely want Shillelagh. This is going to be a really nice damage boost for the Quarterstaff that we're trying to build around. For our background now, the ability scores we want as well as the origin feat are kind of extremely specific, so we're going to have to make our own custom background. I envision this custom background as being something similar to a hermit or acolyte or something you would see on a typical monk, a disciple of some far-off isolated temple, not to a traditional monk discipline, but rather some far-off entity of the far realm. With this in mind, the origin feat we're going to take is Tough. We could pick something else if there was something we really desperately wanted, but Tough is going to give us that extra little hit point boost to be able to be more of a skirmisher or frontline character. We're not extremely durable, but we will be able to take at least a couple extra hits. Then looking at the stat boosts we want, we're going to want to pick a +2 in Charisma and a +1 in Dexterity. Doing so will give us the following array of ability scores: 8 Strength, 16 Dexterity, 14 Constitution, 8 Intelligence, 10 Wisdom, and 17 Charisma. Jumping into the actual level breakdown now, we're going to look at each tier of play. Tier 1 for us being levels 1 to 5, Tier 2 being levels 6 to 10, so on and so forth. Starting at Tier 1 for levels 1 to 5, we are just a pure Warlock. At Monk 1, we gain our first Eldritch Invocation, which is, of course, Pact of the Blade. This way we can make our Eldritch Quarterstaff. At level 2 Warlock, we gain 2 more invocations, and here we are going to take Armor of Shadows, strictly so that way we can be an unarmored skirmisher character, just like a monk would be. And we're also going to take Otherworldly Leap. Otherworldly Leap allows us to cast the jump spell on ourselves without expending a spell slot, meaning we now just have flat out increased mobility, basically permanently. At level 3 we gain our subclass, and here we of course take Great Old One Warlock. With Great Old One Warlock we gain Awakened Mind for a little bit of telepathy, we gain Great Old One spells, and we gain Psychic spells, allowing us to swap the damage types of Warlock spells to psychic damage if they don't already deal psychic damage. At level 4 we gain our first feat, and here we're going to increase our charisma to 18 by taking Fey Touched. Fey Touched is now going to give us the Hex spell and allow us to cast it once per day for free, in addition to giving us the Misty Step spell and allowing us to cast that once per day for free. Misty Step for extra mobility on top of Otherworldly Leap is really, really nice, but really the free Hex per day is fantastic. Great Old One Warlocks don't actually gain free castings of the Hex spell, despite having features that build around it. That means that if we actually want to get some nice use out of the Hex spell and Eldritch Hex as a feature, plus gain some use out of our spell slots, taking Fey Touched is almost a must since we gain that extra free casting. Finally, at level 5, we gain 2 more invocations, and here we are going to take Thirsting Blade so we can attack twice with our quarterstaff, and we're also going to take Eldritch Smite so we can now spend those Pact Magic spell slots on smites. Going up to Tier 2 now, levels 6 to 10, we are again a straight Warlock, and spoilers, we're actually going to be a Warlock for the entire build. At level 6 though, we gain Clairvoyant Combatant. Clairvoyant Combatant says that when we establish a telepathic connection using our Awakened Mind feature, we gain advantage on attack rolls against the creature that we have the connection with. So this is specifically for us trying to make the connection with our enemy instead of using it as telepathy with our allies. It does require a wisdom saving throw to actually make this work, of course, but on that failed save, not only do we gain advantage on attacks against that creature, but they also have disadvantage on attacks against us. This is a really nice protective debuff if we are trying to go toe-to-toe against one big bad specific creature. Once we use the feature, we do have to wait until the end of a short or long rest to get it back, unless we're willing to spend a Pact Magic spell slot in order to get it back early. At level 7, we're going to gain another invocation, and here we're going to grab Eldritch Mind. It is a really early invocation that we just kind of missed, but we want it so we can have advantage on those concentration saving throws if we do get hit while we have Hex up. We don't want to lose concentration on it, especially if we are using that once per day for free casting of it. We really don't want to have to feel like we need to burn the spell slot to make our character work. At level 8, we get our next feat, and here we are taking Weapon Mastery. Weapon Mastery is going to increase our dexterity to 17, which is really nice, but also it gives us the Weapon Mastery feature. Now, the reason I didn't start off as fighter or worry about getting this earlier on is because we don't actually need to worry about toppling enemies until we gain Eldritch Hex, which is a 10th level feature. And I definitely didn't want to pick up Topple if we're not actually ready to use the feature that we're trying to build around. It takes a while for this build to come online just by the nature of building around a higher level feature. Going up to level 9, we gain another invocation, and here we take Life Drinker. Life Drinker says that once per turn, when we hit a creature with our packed weapon, we can deal an extra d6 necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage, and we can spend a hit dice in order to roll it and regain hit points equal to the number rolled plus our constitution modifier. That is a nice little damage boost with a bit of a self-heal as well, though admittedly it does cost a hit die resource, but still, in a pinch, it could come in very clutch. Finally, at level 10, we've made it and have gotten Eldritch Hex, So we now have the full combo. We can, bonus action, cast Hex on an enemy, then run up, use our attack action to make 2 attacks with the quarterstaff, dealing the extra d6 of damage on a hit, an additional extra d6 once per turn thanks to Life Drinker, and that enemy will have disadvantage on the topple saving throw. It is still a Constitution save, so that can be a little risky depending on the enemy, but ideally the disadvantage will be enough to get enemies to start to consistently fail it. Going up to tier 3, level 11 to 15, we're still a full Warlock, and at levels 11 and 13, we gain Mystic Arcanum for a 6th level spell and a 7th level spell. These are spells of those levels that we can cast once per day for free instead of having to use our spell slots to do so. Those can be anything you want. They are our big, powerful spells, so you can have fun choosing any of those that you would like. We also gain an 8th level version of this at level 15, and another invocation at level 15, which is going to be dedicated to Witch Sight. Witch Sight gives us true sight out to a range of 30 feet, and feels very much like a monk extrasensory awareness that we have on this character now. The other thing we get at level 14 is Create Thrall, which is worth a quick mention. If we cast the spell Summon Aberration, we can modify it so that it doesn't require concentration. The duration is reduced to a minute. However, we do buff the aberration that we summon. We give them some extra temporary hit points, and they also can once per turn benefit from the extra damage of our Hex spell. Now the real thing I want to talk about here is level 12, which I had sort of skipped past. At level 12, we gain both an additional invocation and an extra feat. For the invocation, we take Devouring Blade, so that way we can attack 3 times using our attack action with our Packed Quarterstaff. For our feat, we're going to pick up Polearm Master. Polearm Master allows us to round our dexterity off to 18, netting a pretty solid unarmored defense since we have Armor of Shadows. But also, we can now make a bonus action attack with the reverse end of that quarterstaff weapon, and as a reaction, if an enemy enters our reach, we can attack them with the quarterstaff as well. It's not a full opportunity attack, it is its own unique reaction. Both of those attacks, however, can benefit from the Hex spell, Life Drinker if we haven't already used it on a turn, given that Life Drinker is once per turn, so it can also work on the Polearm Master reaction attack, and they can also both benefit from Eldritch Smite. Finally, at tier 4, levels 16 to 20, level 16, we're going to gain another feat, and here we're just improving our charisma by +2 to actually cap it off at 20 since we haven't until now. At level 17, we gain Mystic Arcanum for a 9th level spell, and that can be any 9th level spell you want. Level 18, we then get an extra invocation, so we are now at a total of 10 invocations, and this invocation can be any invocation that you would like as well. There isn't any one specific one that really helps us out too much. Anything that feels like it could be monk-y work pretty well. At level 19, we gain our Epic Boon, and here I am definitely suggesting Boon of Speed, since that feels the most monk-ish, given that we just gain a 30-foot speed boost, and we can still increase our charisma. Finally, at level 20, we gain Eldritch Master. Eldritch Master says that when we use our Magical Cunning feature, which can let us get back some of our packed magic spell slots, we now get all of them back early. More spell slots for a Warlock is a pretty good capstone, especially if we find that we are wanting to cast Hex repeatedly throughout the day. And beyond that, that's the entire build. It is a very wonky build given that we are a Warlock that acts a lot like a monk. We have a quarterstaff. We are unarmored. We have really high mobility thanks to Otherworldly Leap and eventually Boon of Speed if we do take that. And we might have some other monk-like abilities depending on what invocations we grabbed. Mechanically, we're quite the dangerous Blade Lock / Gish character, given that we are running in with that quarterstaff. We're able to make 3 attacks with it eventually with Devouring Blade, 4 after getting Polearm Master at the same level, and we're dealing an extra d6 on each of those attacks thanks to Hex, plus providing disadvantage on the topple saving throw to that enemy. And if they do fail that save, they're getting knocked prone. We have advantage on all of the attacks that come afterwards. If we use Eldritch Smite, the enemy is knocked prone automatically. It's just a lot of debilitating through the prone condition and a lot of extra damage through Hex, Life Drinker, the number of attacks we make, and Eldritch Smite. This also does have a lot devoted to flavor. It's just kind of a fun, goofy build that's meant to feel like a monk as a warlock. There are honestly a lot of options for making a blade lock that builds around this Eldritch Hex feature, but I just found that a monk-like character would kind of be the most fun and goofy. Let me know what you thought of the build though, or what you would add or change to build around the Eldritch Hex feature. Would you actually make a blaster instead? Is there some spell or cantrip out there that provides both an attack and saving throw, so that way you can gain both benefits of the Hex spell once you have Eldritch Hex activated? I couldn't find anything, but there might be something out there that does work. Either way, thank you so much for coming on the journey with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.